The current situation in Israel is marked by this complex intersection of grief, anger, political maneuvering, and dodging by the Prime Minister Netanyahu and his handling of the hostage crisis, the ongoing conflict with Hamas, and Netanyahu's public plea this evening for forgiveness after the deaths of 6 hostages appears to be an attempt to manage the public outrage and to quell the increasing protests against his leadership. It won't work. His apology has already been met with skepticism, as many people see it as a tactic to deflect blame while trying to maintain his grip on power and continue his hardline policies. There's an article in the Financial Times today that underscores the increasing pressure that is on the Israeli Prime Minister, primarily driven by the public's frustration and the growing desperation of the families of the hostages held by Hamas, and the recent discovery of the bodies of 6 hostages allegedly executed as the Israeli troops closed in has intensified public anger in Israel, with large-scale protests in Tel Aviv demanding that Netanyahu prioritize a deal to secure the hostages' release and bring the war to an end. Specifically demanding a ceasefire and a compromise with Hamas. Netanyahu faces a deeply divided nation. On the one hand, there's a significant public support for a negotiated deal, as evidenced by the widespread protests and the general strike that's paralyzed the country. On the other hand, his far-right coalition is vehemently opposed to any agreement that might weaken Israel's military stance against Hamas and threaten the unity of the government if he compromises. The point is that Netanyahu, like many people who are obsessed and saturated with their own power, is myopic and thinks that the people around him are the people that matter. He is in an echo chamber, and we all know what that is because YouTube automatically applies an echo chamber to what we do because of its algorithm. You start looking at videos on this particular subject and that's all you see, and eventually all you hear are people who agree with you. Sadly, that isn't reality, and Netanyahu needs to wake up and recognize that he's crossed the red line and that he's moved firmly into the territory of evil and wrongdoing, and that he's there with Mr. Putin. They are bedfellows in all but name. But the fact that one of them is still alive and the other one is hiding in a Smeg fridge and probably going mushy with the frozen peas is neither here nor there. Netanyahu is as lacking in humanity as is Putin. And Netanyahu's insistence on controlling the Philadelphia corridor, despite it being a major sticking point in ceasefire negotiations, highlights his commitment to a military solution which will inevitably lead to further escalation. But it could be, I think it is, that Netanyahu simply wants to prolong the war to avoid any form of legal confrontation, to avoid being held to account for his actions. While he's still fighting, he has some sort of impunity. That won't last, and he needs to, so to speak, bite the bullet now. And the protests and the strikes across Israel, particularly those involving powerful groups like Histadrut, indicate that public patience has worn thin. And as the situation develops, Netanyahu's ability to navigate these domestic and international pressures, so for example Lammy's decision to cut back on the arms sales to Israel, these things will have a serious impact on Netanyahu's political survival and the broader outcome of the conflict. So his plea for forgiveness is simply a rhetorical flourish, a strategic maneuver rather than a general admission of failure, and it's aiming to preserve his political standing and to recognize the discontent, but to dismiss that discontent. I think he's wrong, but I've thought he's wrong for a long time.